Greetings, Internet! Welcome to the fabulous 150th episode of the Comic Watchers Show. I'm your host, Matt Meyer. My trusty sidekick, Mighty Mike Akins, is out this week, but Professor Cody White is back in the saddle for the second week in a row. Hello, aloha, Cody.
Aloha.
How is life in the Pineapple State?
Oh, you know, it's a tough life if somebody's got to live it. Sitting out here on my front porch, I know some of y'all are freezing your butts off where you're at.
We're actually not. We're having an uncommonly warm December so far, and it's just, it's leaving me waiting for the other shoe to drop. So,
Right.
Right. So, Cody, when we started this, or you started this thing, I wasn't even here at the very beginning. Did you ever think it would possibly go 150 episodes?
I didn't think they'd let us go 3. Especially the first episode. I mean, the first episode ran 2 hours and 47 minutes. Just absurd.
Just drunken, blathering.
Oh, yeah.
What was the first episode about? Do you even remember anymore?
So back in the beginning, we would format the show around what we had read that week. So everyone would have like 3 books that they read that week that they wanted to talk about.
And there were 4 of y'all. There was you, there was JJ, there was B, and Derbs.
Right.
That's a lot of talking.
It was a lot of talking. It didn't take us very long to be like, that's too many books.
Right. Well, as soon as you get JJ in the mix talking, it's like you've immediately tripled the conversation length time.
Right.
So, well, this week we have Scott Snyder coming back. He's running a little bit late. He messaged us. He's got a very minor family issue he's dealing with. Nothing bad. Nothing. His house isn't on fire or anything. No limbs are broken. But we've got Scott, and he graciously decided to come back, and he's going to talk to us about his new books that are coming out exclusively through COMIXOLOgy. Cody, sound off. There's 3 of them.
There's 3 of them. So we've got we have Demons with Greg Capullo on art.
They've worked together a time or 2.
We have Clear with, help me with the name,
Francis Manipool.
Right. Francis.
Yes.
I was blanking on his first name. I was like, and then I can't say the next one. But Night of the Ghoul with
Francesco Francavilla.
Thank you.
Also, former cohort of Scott Snyder's, who did a good chunk of the art alongside Jock back on the Black Mirror.
Right. And you know what's cool about this, all this Best Jacket press, right? Because that's Scott's label.
That's his indie label name.
Is that it seems like this is like the greatest hits. He's getting to get to play with everyone that he wants to play with. Like he's got a book coming with Jock. He's got a book coming with Jamal Eagley. He's got books with everybody. Like he's got 8 books coming out on this label.
Yeah.
Through COMIXOLOgy, and then I think later in print via Dark Horse, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah. The eventual trades will be through Dark Horse.
Yeah. Like, I mean, what a time to be alive. Like,
right.
For Scott Snyder, this career feels like it's hit the perfect stride at this point. Like I get to do whatever I want to do, put it on my own label, work with my friends.
Yeah.
Do digital and print.
Call whatever shots he wants. I mean,
yeah.
And at the end of the day, he's still a nice dude, and comes to our shitty little show. So,
this will be the 3rd time we've had Scott now.
Is it the 3rd?
Well, the first time was a presents with me talking to him about Nocturnal at the time.
I forgot about that one, and then he did a pop in for the death metal. So he'll be our first 3-timer.
Yeah.
Take that, Steve Orlando and Tom Pyre.
Yes, way to go. Now Steve's got to come back.
Yeah, challenge somewhere in New York. Steve was like, challenge accepted. But yeah, I think you're really hitting on something there right now in that it's Scott Snyder's moment, but it's also bigger than just Scott, right? Yeah. Like we've seen creators get various deals in the past with publishers and what have you, and it was this or that, and maybe it was hot for a minute and then it petered out.
Yeah.
But this feels different, right? Like COMIXOLOgy, that's big. They're Amazon big,
right?
Literally.
What's
And
funny about
he was just
COMIXOLOgy is I didn't
completely
think
in
twice about
control.
them for years.
Right?
For years. And then all of a sudden, Afterlift hit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it
Yeah.
was really
Darcy and
Afterlift
Lou.
that changed my view of how I was looking at COMIXOLOgy.
Yeah.
And then it won that Eisner. So so that's a thing that happened in my lifetime, where a completely digital comic at the time won an Eisner Award, which is dope.
Right.
Yeah, that's when I kind of started to pay more attention to it. And once you start looking at it, it's like, oh my God, they've been doing stuff all along. We just
just
didn't
weren't
know.
paying attention because it was
Yeah.
digital.
Because it was digital, right? Because
Right.
we're old farts and
We're
used
old farts and we go to the comic store every week.
right.
So, yeah. But, I mean, the nice thing about this is because these comics will eventually see print in collected form, Scott Snyder gets to have his cake and eat it too.
No,
And
I love
frankly,
it.
so do fans.
Yep.
I like holding stuff and reading it. Witches. So, but I also like the immediacy of just being able to turn on my tablet and like, ooh, a comic. Right. And it doesn't hurt, like you said, that he's getting to work with some of the biggest names out there artistically. Freaking Greg Capullo. Again, it's natural that these two are going to work together again. But Manipul, I can't remember the last time I saw him do anything outside of DC, honestly.
That's a good point. I can't remember the last time either.
And then, Frank Avila, he's all over the place, but at the same time, any time he's on a project, even if it's just like a variant cover or something, it feels special, right? Because that his art style is just so unique, yet also evocative of an old school, like 1940s horror vibe in everything that he draws. And so, of course, putting him on Night of the Ghoul, which is in and of itself kind of a throwback to old school horror like that.
What a cool book that I can't wait to talk about that book because
I know. I want to talk about it now. But Scott's not here yet.
Yes, I know, right?
I don't want to just jump the gun on the conversation. But
not in the yard or something.
Hi Artemis. But he's off to a stellar start. All of these comics have got 2 issues out.
Mm-hmm.
What's the release schedule like on them, Cody? Just once a month?
Once a month. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, We Have Demons is the first week of the month, Clear is the second week of the month, and Night of the Ghoul is the third week of the month. And then I assume something else will jump in here soon to pick up the fourth week. Because the first month in Scottober, the fourth week was like a sampler, like a primer for what the books were and what books were coming. And
which I have to say, when I was looking up the books to do my homework in the drive, and I saw that file that just said sampler, I was like, that's kind of a lame name for a title, but whatever. but these comics stand out and they look good. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, COMIXOLOGY new material debuts on Tuesdays, same as DC,
that's
right?
correct. Yes, same as
they've got a big jump
DC.
On everyone other than DC.
Right.
In terms of getting in people's hands, because
then they're in your hands at midnight. Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no wait. If you want to stay up late for your favorite COMIXOLOGY book, or wake up early, I guess, but I mean, I can't imagine going that direction. That sounds terrible. But yeah, but you can. Like, I don't know the length of all of these books. I think We Have Demons is supposed to be 3 issues for the first. I don't know.
Really?
But I'm not positive. We need Scott.
Right?
I have so many questions.
See, that actually is the opposite of what I was thinking, because to me, We Have Demons feels like it has the most space to run and be an ongoing series if he wanted it to be.
Yeah,
right?
And I think that a lot of these
Clear and Night of the Ghoul, very clearly their setups are finite. 4 or 5 issues, something like that.
I didn't get that feeling from Clear. Night of the Ghoul for sure I could see. But
Night of the Ghoul for sure, but at least like the opening arc, like this murder mystery.
Yeah.
But they're clearly, so much more to explore in the world of Clear, because just the very concept of these veils that people are wearing, and I swear one of these days Scott will get here and we'll get to ask him directly about it, feels like such a natural extension of what we're already seeing with VR.
Yeah.
Just far less clunky than Oculus goggles.
Right.
So,
I mean, it is interesting though. Like, we are headed that way as a society.
yeah.
Hang on.
So, Scott Snyder is absolutely doing a little bit of future casting with Clear, but he's done, it, like all good sci-fi, it's stuff that you could see with its roots today.
Right.
So especially, I really liked the premise of the Red War.
Yeah.
And you, like, just asking you as a veteran, as an intelligence officer veteran, no less, what just, and there's not like a ton of detail to this, but the basic setup and basic scenario, what did you think about that?
I mean, it was more uncomfortably familiar than than I wanted it to be, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot I can say on the subject, unfortunately, but yeah. I mean, it felt like with the, I don't want to spoil it for
we definitely don't want to walk into spoiler territory,
but like with the way that battle turned, I think is a little bit not as what I would imagine, but the idea of that battle being a major turning point for the world, and being a very scary thing for the United States. Yeah. Like, that would change the whole game.
Well, and I definitely like the way that it's set up too, because there's some kind of, I don't want to say glazed over, but some light social commentary there. 40 years of bullshit that led up to the Red War, and then correct me if I'm wrong, I think the it's supposed to happen around 2050, 2051, something like that. So talking about now, and everything that's happened since 9/11, basically, it was great for us to be able to come together and feel a common purpose as a country again.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me, because, one of the things that we talk about a lot just in our chats and what have you is just the current level of political discord, and just the fact that there really seems to be two very different, not just Americas, but perceptions of America, and there's always hand-wringing of what is it going to take to get us back to quote unquote normal, like whatever that means. And the scary thing is, after that, reading that short little missive, like, would it take another 9/11 style thing happening to get everybody to shut up and realize we're all members of the same nation?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not the first rodeo either. I mean, this is Pearl Harbor Day. This is
definitely
Iran-Contra. Like, there have always been peppered throughout the history of the United States these tipping point moments that seem to be predicated entirely on violence as ways of uniting us, which is scary in a lot of ways. Like,
it is.
Can't we find a way without the violence to come together? Like, did we need George Floyd to die for us to mobilize like that? Like, that's crazy to me. It sucks.
Oh, there's Scott.
Hey, all right.
Hey,
I'm so sorry. The 2-year-old, like, I could not get this kid to sleep. I finally got him to sleep. I apologize.
Oh, it's okay. I understand.
It was my dude.
Oh, it was a nightmare. He was just like, holding on to this toy, and I couldn't get it out of his hand, and it was a whole thing. So I apologize. But I'm
good.
See you guys, and I'm sorry it took so long.
No, it's okay, man.
We've just been sitting here chatting.
Totally. We had to go ahead and jump on and get it started just because Facebook was going to boot the link for the live feed if we didn't get it going by a certain time. So
no, it's my fault.
Thanks a lot, Zuck.
No, I'm so sorry again. I really I was excited to be here on time, and I just Could not get out of this kid's bedroom.
No, I
cool,
totally
dude.
get it.
Yeah, we have kids. We get it. So
yeah, you'll hear mine. He's running
yeah,
around here.
we're very keen to talk to you about COMIXOLOgy. First of all, congratulations, because
Oh, thanks.
yeah, I mean, this is just such an enormous thing, not just for you, but it feels like a big inflection point for the industry, because they're basically giving you free reign to bring in whatever crazy ideas you come up with. They're trusting you with whatever crazy ideas you come up with, whatever creators, your buddies, hey, it's Greg, and so on and so forth, and just go hog wild and say, hey, here's a license to print money for us, Scott. And we see James Tynion's deal that he's got, and also left Batman for. Weird, but these things are happening more and more, and it's this massive empowerment of the creator that I just love seeing. Man, I mean, how is your head not just filling up my screen right now because it's so swollen?
No, I feel hugely lucky about it. I mean, for me, it was a few things. I mean, the way that deal came about was sort of it was really fortunate. I mean, a lot of the books, like the 3 or 4 of the books in that line, I was working on with my co-creators before the pandemic. Like a couple of them are a few years in the works, like Night of the Ghoul, we were teasing back in 2018, 2019, and same thing with Clear. Francis and I started working on that in 2019 into 2020, and we have Demons. Greg and I have been talking about for a while. So I mean, what happened was I was kind of squirreling away pages and scripts with those guys on a few of them, and with Dan Panosian on Canary, and we were all doing it on top of our DC or Marvel stuff. And we made a deal that, like, once the current projects we were on were over, we were going to find a way to kind of put them out. And then the pandemic hit, and with everything shut down, I expected everybody to say, let's go back to DC and Marvel and put this on hiatus. And I was really hoping they wouldn't, but I did well with Batman and all of that stuff, but I don't have the money to pay 4 or 5 issues of a Francis Manipal and on top of issues for Francesco, on top of issues for Capullo. So for me, it really was a matter of, like, I just couldn't do it, So I was like, look, what do you guys want to do? I'll certainly, like, give everything I have to try and make this work, but if things stay shut for 4 or 5 months, I'm going to run out of money. And they were great. They were all like, we just want to keep going. And luckily, I wound up talking to Will Dennis, our editor, on all the Best Jacket stuff, who was the guy who greenlit American Vampire and ran Vertigo for a number of years. And he was like, you should talk to Chip over at COMIXOLOGY, Chip Mosher, because they're looking to kind of expand their originals line. And I was like, I don't want to do that unless they don't have anything in print. I don't feel comfortable doing that with retailers in the spot they're in. And Chip was like, Will was like, I think they're penning some kind of deal with Dark Horse. So when I went to talk to Chip, he was like, no, we're in the, like, final sort of stages of this big contract with them where we're going to have our work come out in print, but not only in print collected edition, but we're going to have a kind of variable output based on which book would fit the direct market which way best. So for example, like, we have Demons, we have the option of doing single issue with variant covers and extra back matter, scripts, all that kind of stuff. A different book like Barnstormers, which is probably more trade friendly, would be trade, because it's a less of a direct market, like heavy sequential type book. And he was like, Chip was like, the goal is to let you guys, your creative teams, kind of decide what fits the direct market best and what fits digital format best, and to show the benefits of both. And so I got really excited about it, where I was like,
sure,
like you're saying, to me, there were kind of 3 elements to it. Like, one was absolutely creator empowerment in the way that we get good wages for the artists. we'd retain all of the ancillary rights, not to get too inside the beltway and too kind of granular about why this was exciting to us. But if anyone's out there,
we want that. We want that.
If anyone's interested in making
We're
comics,
nerds, man.
this is the key stuff if you're interested in making comics, you know? So it's like retaining the ancillary rights, so you retain film and TV, making sure you get a good wage for your co-creators. And thirdly, the creative freedom to make the books how we wanted. So that was really exciting just on a kind of on a output level. But for me, on a personal level, I think the two other things that really mattered were during the pandemic, it made me, feel really uncomfortable putting a bunch of books out in the direct market when it would cost readers a lot of money, and it just felt weird to be like, well, I'm going to make 3-4 independent books. Not that I disparage anybody doing that. I mean, please do it and, inject great books into the direct market. But I just felt like someone that has the readership that I have doing that in a certain way, it just demands a lot of money from the readers to pick everything up. And I felt weird about that. And then I also felt weird about wanting to do something that I believed in that felt like it would push the industry forward in a direction that I believed in. And I could be wrong 100%, but my genuine belief on my kids is that one of the big things holding us back is the lack of synergy and confluence between digital and print. In so many other medium, like people always are like, why is manga so popular? Why is this, why my kids love manga? Because they have a fucking subscription to it and they read it for free or for their monthly payment on Shonen Jump and Crunchyroll, and then they wind up getting the volumes from my comic store from Fourth World. But they can browse whatever. And then after that, they go pick up what they want for collectible, and that format of browsing digitally, whether it's Netflix, what subscription-based browsing, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Amazon Prime, whether it's Hulu, whether it's becoming the norm. And for comics to kind of, I think, keep digital in this bizarre thing, in my opinion, is date, like same day and date, same price point, same content. It forces digital into a competitive position. Like if I want to get a Marvel book, I don't get I get my DC books for free on Comixology, but I get my Marvel books I don't, obviously, or Image. If it's raining and cold out and I don't want to go to the store, I'm going to get them digitally or I'm going to get them in print because it's the same exact content, same price, same day, same. But if I could browse my books and I could, for a subscription in some level, and I could see what there was in a bare bones borrowing way, like a library card through Comixology, but for one price price of one comic a month. My thinking is I would go to the store because I have more money to spend to buy that creator's output, to buy more of the collected editions, to buy more of the single issues, to try out more books that I don't get through that subscription, without just spending on things that you could do better just browsing in that way. So again, I might be totally wrong, but I went to all the co-creators and I said, look, this is what I think. And I spoke to my resellers here at Red Shirt and at Fourth World. They'll vouch for me. I went in, I'm like, is this a terrible idea? And I spoke to the co-creators and I was like, what do you guys think? We don't have to do it this way. I'll go out and do books if you want to do them at Image, if you want to do Panel Syndicate, if you want to do Kickstarter, whatever you want. And everybody involved that wound up at Comixology, those 8 projects, they all were like, we'd like to try that because we believe in that methodology. And what I really liked about it then was I could put out the books in these waves and be like 3 books. When those 3 books kind of finish their first arcs and take a hiatus while we do the next arcs, the next wave of books could come out, and then the final 2 books. And then when that whole cycle is done, we go back and do it over again. And what that would allow is the value of a subscription would be obvious, right? You get $4.99 or $5.99 for a month, and then you get Demons 1, Clear 1, Ghoul 1, next month, number 2s, next month, number 3s, plus all the number 2s and number 1s. So the other thing about that, and then I'll shut up, not to give the longest answer in the world, but the other thing that I really love about it is when I went and I looked at to see what was available through the subscription on Comixology Unlimited, a lot of my former students are doing books there. A lot of progressive, interesting new voices from Ariella Cristantina and Mike Morisi and friends of mine like Jock and Jeff Lemire, but and Chip and like Chip Zdarsky and so on. But a lot of new voices, from people that I've taught to people that I think are pushing the industry in really interesting directions, have done books with them. So I was like, well, there's 40,000 comics on there. Maybe they'll use us as a gateway drug and fall in love with things from Dark Knight Returns to brand new voices. So all of it seemed to make sense for me. So I feel very lucky, both because, yes, they give us a lot of creative freedom. It was a great deal financially for us, but I feel lucky to be able to do something that I genuinely believe in. And again, I'm just a writer. I could be wrong, but one of the big problems I think the industry has is not adjusting, except in this glacial way, to a different landscape. It's a scary time, but it's exciting, in a lot of ways. And I think there's a need to bring in new readers, but there's also this hungry readership but they're trained to read differently. They're not trained to go get single issue comics all the time to discover what they love. They're trained to read digitally, trained to read through subscription, through other medium, and then come in and buy things collectively and fall in love with the whole environment, that geek environment of the comic shop and all of it, So I feel very lucky and I'm very thrilled. I mean, I'm over the moon. I feel like, I'm getting to do books I love with people I am inspired by, with no pressure, and I'm outside the grind of DC and Marvel for a little bit. And
right.
Really lucky.
Cody, go ahead, jump in, man.
Yeah, so I mean, this is very much so feels on brand for you. The first time we talked was about Noctera, then Nocturnal. Like I think you changed of it later in the day after that interview. Yeah, that's I always thought was funny. Like, did this whole interview calling it Nocturnal, and then I get an email from David saying,
"No, well, we got people coming after us because there was some series, like some kids book series called the Nocturnals or something like that, and they wound up coming after us and not like suing us, but they were like, this is a problem and you've got to, so it was
wild. I think the name change ended up working out very well. So I mean, whatever.
Yeah, I like this name better. Yeah.
But yeah, like back when we talked then, you were talking about the reason for doing the Kickstarter was to make sure that you could get the whole first arc paid for first. So almost it feels like with the Comixology stuff, you're doing this in reverse now. You're going to put it out, and then later on you can put it out with some additional material to, I don't know, help the shops, like help the LCSs keep themselves afloat. Like this is very on brand. I think Best Jacket Press is one of, just the premier imprints as far as looking out for the entirety of the community.
Thanks, man. We're trying. I mean, I know I'm going to fuck up at some time, but I mean, I'm genuinely like, I am trying my best, and we're going to announce a couple grants I'm really proud of in the spring for up and coming writers that we're partnering with different organizations. Like I won't spoil it, but partnering with different organizations that really support emergent and diverse voices and stuff like that. So, I really am trying to be at least conscious of using sort of the platform to do things I believe in. And in addition to just making books I love, like the teaching for me was a way of saying, I'm not going to use the Substack. I have all these books coming out, through Comixology. Maybe it would benefit me to do another one through Substack or that, but I felt like it was a better opportunity to try and use it to bring in new voices to teach, and do it that way and try and have fun with it and go back to my roots. So it is like, I'm trying hard, I swear, like with Best Jacket to do books that I can stand by and say, you haven't seen this from me and my co-creators before. We're trying new things creatively. And then as members of the community, trying things that we feel, are healthy, at least for the industry.
Well, and it speaks to your sense of responsibility and to not just people that are going to buy your stuff or your own creative impulses or even your partners, right? I mean, you're really looking at these things holistically and including the retailers in there who have had a rough go of it in recent times. So, I mean, my hat's very much off to you for looking at it that way. I mean, really, in its own way, the way that you're looking out for them is not unlike Neil Adams looking out for Siegel and Schuster back in the 70s.
Oh, I wouldn't.
It really rings in that arena for me. I mean,
I can't touch the hem of what Neil was or any of that stuff. It's more just, I think some of the moves now are hard in the way that I think some of the conventional wisdom, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily work anymore.
No. Well, it's a different world. It's a different marketplace. You have to adapt.
Yeah, and I think there are all these weird log jams. Like, there's more superheroes are more ubiquitous than ever before. There's more geek culture. There's more potential readership. There's more excitement around indie books and all of it. And I just think finding a way of opening the doors as wide as possible and being willing to kind of take a few risks about saying, well, even with Substack, it was interesting, like talking to creators that have been doing it for a while. One of the things that they're realizing or finding a lot of the time is that sometimes when you wind up not putting a lot behind the paywall, but instead you wind up offering a bunch in your free newsletter, it drives way more traffic to the few things that you keep behind the paywall, as opposed to putting everything this way or keeping it sort of, behind that gate, promising all of it for a pay, or for a cost. What I'm trying to say is sometimes when you say like, hey, we're going to lose money on a subscription because everyone's going to browse their comics digitally. Well, if they browse them digitally now, they're buying them digitally singularly, as opposed to going to your store and buying them. They're probably getting them, pirating them if they're that inventive, if they want to read digitally, or doing something like that. Why not say, fall down the rabbit hole of loving comics? What you read digitally will only inspire you to go buy things in print in different ways, because you see those booms happening across other medium. Like, I've been really amazed watching the boom recently in independent bookstores when, there's a bigger digital readership than there ever was. People order through Amazon, more than before, but they do wind up lately. There's a big spike in independent bookstore sales because people enjoy going back to the store and buying their books because they've been able to browse and feel comfortable with their choices. And I think that's part of it. And, nowadays stores sell everything from comics to every aspect of geek culture. And the weird thing that I realized, and then I'll stop about it, was that, when I was a kid, I had a subscription. I got my comics in that manila envelope all the time. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
I got them. My dad ordered it for me, and I had them all the time from, wherever. I don't remember. Like, he ordered my DC and my Marvel, and it came in that, and they get all fucked up in the mail and everything. But like, I'd still go to Forbidden Planet on 11th and Broadway all the time with him every Wednesday, because that was our trip. And I love talking to the retailers and the people that worked there and were knowledgeable. And I just love being there and buying stuff with him because I was part of that culture, So the point I'm trying to make is that you could always bypass the shop if you wanted to bypass the shop back in the day too. The fun of the shop was going to be a part of everything and getting the things you wanted to really hold and keep, the tactile experience of it. So for me, I don't think getting more people in the door by offering things subscription-based digital is a problem for that. I would hope, or I believe, that it would actually expand the readership in a way that would be healthy for stores. But, again, I might be wrong. I believe it. So I'm willing to give it a try.
Well, let's talk about the books themselves a little bit. Night of the Ghoul.
Oh my God, Night of the Ghoul is so friggin' cool.
We're just going to start with Cody's.
Let me just Just do it.
Please go ahead. Yeah. This book, holy shit, you're tapping into some creeping horror here that I haven't seen from you in a while. Maybe not since the first miniseries of Witches.
Sure.
But man, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. Night of the Ghoul. What does that mean? Francopia art. But I'm there. But how did it feel, man, getting to work with your old Black Mirror partner there, with Francesco?
Oh, it's great, man. I mean, for anyone not reading it yet, like Night of the Ghoul is about this kind of ne'er-do-well guy who wanted to be a filmmaker and now is works digitizing old movies, and he stumbles across the remnants of what was supposed to be the greatest horror movie of all time from the 1930s, but it was destroyed in this studio fire that killed a bunch of people. And so he tracks down the writer-director who's still alive in this rest home out in the middle of the California desert, and confronts him and is like, what happened in this fire and what happened to the film? And it begins this kind of really terrifying claustrophobic night. And it cuts back and forth between the kind of the horrible things happening in this rest home and the original remnants of the film done in black and white by Francesco. And so that really, I mean, each project that I'm working on genuinely came as something that was built from the ground up with the co-creator. That's the thing I love the most about them. So Night of the Ghoul, it was really like when 2016, 2017 happened. And Francesco and I think we're so both, I mean, he's super liberal. I'm liberal. Like, we were both so sort of, I think, frustrated and everything with the landscape at that time and how ugly things were getting between everybody and all of it. Sure. That both of us kind of weirdly found each other revisiting classic horror movies for fun, just to kind of take a break. And I was talking to him, and it was sort of like, well, wouldn't it be cool if somebody made a classic movie monster, but that spoke to this moment? And it started this conversation where we were like, well, how would we do it? Because you couldn't just make it black and white. It would have to be, right. You want something that's, because the book gets really, really dark in the present, like body horror. Wait till you see it gets like real. It's really one of the evilest things I've done. But the fun was like, well, let's make a monster, this ghoul, that was the granddaddy of all monsters, where like it's this kind of parasite that hides in a human host and creates all kinds of disease and plague while it's that person is feeding on the dead secretly over their lifespan. And it works on all different sorts of plagues and things, and it creates all different kinds of disgusting diseases. But it builds and builds and builds until it's ready to release like a civilization-ending plague. And there are different ghouls in different places, and this one is the worst one. And the idea was that it's created the legends for all these other monsters like vampires and werewolves because of the different pathogens it's released at different times that have caused those legends, like a blood coagulant that dead bodies like don't they don't deteriorate the way they're supposed to, so people think they're vampires because they still look healthy even though they're dead, and zombies because there's like a brain-eating virus that released, so all that kind of stuff. And so the monster, there's a group that worships the monster called Order of the Fly because they believe that it's about bringing us back to our basics. When civilization becomes too complicated or self-interested, the ghoul is there to say it's all about a struggle between life and death. Don't forget that. Mm-hmm. And so it has this very kind of modern element to it that both Francesco and I think hits a nerve for us. But at the same time, it's an homage to all those fun classic, horror movies, The Mummy and Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman and old black and white. So I love it. And it's about 7.5 issues long. This first one, it's got big extra sized issues, the first and last, and 6 in the middle. But it's got also, like, if it works, and it seems to be going over really well with people, thank God. Like we're gonna keep doing it. So we're gonna do the Ghoul, and then we have a follow-up series that's done differently, not the same format, but another kind of experiment artistically that would be about a different monster that is like one of those second tier monsters that we want to make a lister, like a banshee, that kind of thing. So go back and do another take where the next one will be more of an oral history done differently visually, but you know, it'd be like a series of kind of inventing new.
Right. Well, yeah, I love that you have more ideas for this sort of format, because one of the things Cody and I were talking about before you were able to jump in is that of these 3 series, Night of the Ghoul is the one that seems to have the most finite premise. I mean, and that's fine. I mean, tell the story you're going to tell. But, you know, Clear, by contrast, has a wealth of stories to explore within that world. You know, we have demons that just, please let that one go as long as you and Greg.
Oh my God, I have to, Greg. I know, we have demons like Greg. Well, Greg, the way that that's structured, they're all kind of seasonal ongoings because the creator, like the artists themselves, will need a break to get farther ahead to do the second arc. So some of them, I'm considering, like we have demons. I'm considering doing interim stuff if Greg wants to, where we kind of co-write, or I write for another artist. He does covers while he's getting back on the thing. Because the one thing he really wants to do after the first arc is sort of these 3 oversized issues. It comes out to like 100+ pages, so the equivalent of 5+ issues. But he wants to finish the Creech. He really does, and I know that it means a lot to him. And it's one last arc he's been trying to do for a very, very long time. So I don't, as much as I wanted him to stay and do that right after this and just keep going. I know he'll want to do that, which is like another kind of a 3-issue arc, the way the other issues were on other arcs that were on the Creech, and then come back hopefully and do this. Or if you know, it really takes off, then yeah. Or if that's taking him longer, then maybe he'll come and do some things with this, and I'll have another artist, and then he'll come back and do the anchors. And so that's the goal, is to just keep them going in different formats. Clear is seasonal, so it's definitely, we want to do the 6. It's again 6 oversized. The last one's oversized. Take a few months to let Francis get ahead, do a few mini stories, come back, do it again, and Ghoul is that way. So these 3 are all kind of have the potential to be, or are planned and, you know, accepted by them, by Comixology, as seasonal ongoings. A couple like Barnstormers is finite. That one is like, you know, 6 issues, 5 to 6 issues really in equivalent length and done. It's a historical fiction. And Book of Evil is that way too. Book of Evil is like a 1 story. But and Canary is 1 story as well. But Duck and Cover is like a sincere ongoing. And these ones are all seasonal ongoing. So we want to keep a lot going.
I want to talk about the nuts and bolts a little bit. Yeah. So one thing that I noticed in reading Black Mirror, like I was reading the Black Mirror while I was doing my master's English thesis. And it was one of those things where you have this like come to God moment where you say, okay, oh shit, this is a thing that's happening. Where you see that the artistic story being told does not line up at all with the textual narrative. And Clear starts out the same way. Yeah. Right, where you're telling the joke and you're watching this woman commit suicide, or you think maybe not. I want to know what it's like to write that script.
Yeah, I love that
script to write.
That technique, actually, I was just teaching about it in my Substack class the other day, where it doesn't really have a name. I usually just call it like refractive narration, where it feels to me.
For what it's worth, I call it dual track narration.
That's a better name, actually. But the idea is, yeah, the meaning of it comes from the contrast or the space between what you're hearing or reading and you're seeing, as opposed to, I mean, it's always that way where you never are narrating exactly what you're seeing, or there's no point for the narration. But with that in particular, there seems to be zero connection at first between the two things. So the distance is so great that it feels almost like you're concentrating on reading something that doesn't connect, until you keep going and you start to realize the thematic parallels and stuff.
Right.
So with Clear, which, for anyone not reading, it's about future where everybody connects to the internet neurologically, and then the big thing everybody does is to filter, skin the world. It's called veiling it in whatever format they want. So the superstructure legally still has to be there. But like if I wanted to look out and see zombie apocalypse, then everybody would look like zombies. If you want porn setting, everybody's naked. And if you want like manga setting, everything's like that. So everyone lives in these kind of subjective bubbles. And it's about a detective trying to solve this murder mystery, and he always keeps the setting unclear. So it's a lot. It came from Francis staying with me and my family here with his family, with his daughter and his wife Rachel, and we had a blast. And we were just talking about being parents. His daughter was like 2 at the time. Now she's 4, and he has another kid, a new baby. But we were talking about our fears for our kids, and one of the things that I think both of us were really concerned about was this notion of this kind of algorithmic, I think, systems that they plug into all the time, where when they search for anything on Google, when they go on Spotify, when they go Amazon, like there's a benefit to having something say to you, oh, you like that? Let's have more of that. But on another level, it's really terrifying as a parent, because I feel like it's all it does is kind of feed them more of what they already like. There's no challenge. There's no kind of seeing outside your insulated kind of diagram of stuff that you already like. And when it gets to information and news and opinions as they get older, it starts to get scarier, where you feel like they wind up having nothing that's going to kind of, disrupt things and make them think outside their comfort zone, or any of the stuff that I feel like is important as you get older. So yeah, for me, it was about creating a story that really spoke to that, and kind of was an extension of that fear to a degree that really was extreme. So we both really love it. I'm super proud of, his art is incredible. It's also like a visual buffet, obviously, for an artist, because you can draw whatever you want based on whatever anyone is seeing through their veils. But the story, where it goes in issue 4 and 5 and 6, I'm really, really proud of. It's probably the book that's the most like urgent, in that way, the most kind of, I think, engaged with things right now on the surface.
Sure. Well, and all good sci-fi has that aspect to it of, oh, I can see this really happening because it's parallel to things now. My immediate thought was, this is Blade Runner-y without feeling like a knockoff. So
thanks, man.
Hats off to you, because that's one of the best movies ever made. But it's also really, really different from anything I've personally read from you. So, how good does it feel to stretch your wings a little bit and try something new, especially with a partner that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I don't believe you've worked with Francis before, have you?
Just on small things. I've worked
on like smaller things here and there. Okay.
Yeah, No Justice we worked on together, and
right.
New Justice, and I worked with him on arcs of Justice League, like on the Aquaman arc we did.
That's right. Okay, I did completely forget he had jumped in there to pinch.
No, but there were always short projects. So
yeah.
it was with James as well, with James Tynan. So I never got a chance to really dig in with him, but we became very close back when he was on Detective a while ago, when I was in the Bat World in Gotham, and always wanted to work together on something more extensive. So he is the nicest dude like in the world, and him and Jock both are like, who could be nicer and kinder? It's like a competition that you just but he wanted to do something that really flexed his muscles creatively. And I think when I pitched this to him after he stayed here, and I kind of came up with it and was like, what do you think? He was just so excited to try things he hadn't tried before and color his own work and all of it. And I think it's easily his best stuff. So I'd say that about everybody's work on these books, just because I think there's a kind of liberating aspect to being able to build something from scratch together based on what you want to draw. So with Greg, it was the same thing. With We Have Demons, it was like, you can see it straight up his alley, where it was like, hey, let's take all the stuff that we love doing in metal and all of this and do something that's ours. And I was like, I have an idea I want to do something about demons that's like a love letter between a parent and a child, kind of about, this is what I want for you, and that, without it being sappy, but about, coming to terms with this generational gap and science-y and metals. And he was like, you had me at demons. Like, let's do it. All right. So it was, again, building it up with him and doing the designs first and coming up with Gus and coming up with Lamb and coming up with all the blades. And so it was the same. It was like building something with a co-creator from the first pages to the first designs and the idea all the way through. So I don't think there's no book in here that was like, hey, if this person doesn't do this book, what about this person? It was always like, I have an idea, but what do you think of it? Do you want to do something like this? And what are your ideas for this? And, what are your fears and hopes for this kind of like a prompt, does it speak to you? So there was that.
It sounds like you guys' working relationship has just really hit a total stride. I know many years ago I was listening to you on a podcast, or maybe it was Greg. I can't remember at this point, it's been so long, on one of Kevin Smith's podcasts, talking about how when you first started collaborating on Batman, it was a little bit of a challenge just because he was used to working with looser scripts and you write very shall we say Alan Moore-esque scripts, at least at the time.
I did.
And, but I mean, you guys are clearly enjoy working together and really do come across as brothers
we text all day long. I can show you with my phone. Like he texts me, literally texts me funny political cartoons and shit all day long. Like we're like, he's like, that's literally 1:33 p.m. earlier in the day. Like we're just like, we go back and forth all the time. So he is like my brother. I mean, he's there. I have no better friend than Greg in the world. But he also, I think what happened with that was, like you said, I came in terrified of just being way over my head. Like, cause I got Detective was like a fluke, where I had one issue of American Vampire under my belt when they hired me to do Detective. And before American Vampire, I had maybe like 4 issues of Iron Man Noir and one shot and 1 8-pager. And so I was not qualified for Detective Comics for 12 issues front and back. And at first I only had the backup, but Paul Dini was doing the features and then he quit to do something else. I don't remember. And so they were just like, hey, Grant Morrison is on Batman Inc., Tony Daniels on Batman. Who's reading Detective? I'm sure is what they were thinking. Like, just, we can give it to this guy. But, when I got on Batman, I was terrified as it was. And then they were like, oh, and it's going to be #1. And I was like, now I don't want to do it. Because, with all the reboots since, there was, I think there's a lot of like, oh yeah, reboots. But Batman had not been rebooted since #1 at that time. So there was a real
extra challenge to that.
Oh, it was terrifying. And he's my favorite character in comics. So the idea of getting your favorite character, like when you feel, you're not prepared. Like, it's like, hey, I'm a baseball player and I'm in single-A baseball and I hope to make it to the majors someday. And then they're like, hey kid, now you're pitching in the World Series in Game 7. Oh my God, I am not qualified. And so me wanting to do the script format that I had been doing, not realizing that Jock and Raphael and the people I had been working with in that first year in comics just happened to like full script better back then. So I had lucked out and like been working in a way that they enjoyed, not realizing that like I went in there being like, this is how I write and this is what I need. And Greg was like, well, can you loosen up a little bit? I'm like, no, this is how it has to be. So I was the asshole. I mean, I wasn't trying to be mean. I was just scared. And it only took a couple issues before I realized, like, God, every time this guy gets any room, he just kills it. Like, and issue 5 was the one where I really was like, okay, you know what? What can you do that you think would make this feel really disorienting for a reader? And he was like, spin the book. And I was like, oh my God, why have I not been giving this guy, like, he's way better than me. Like, I should,
And what a jarring experience that issue was.
Yeah.
Because, as somebody that, and Cody will probably agree, we were raised in Super God Batman era. We're not used to seeing him get his ass kicked in the 5th issue or anything like that. So, I mean, even just from that perspective, but now we're taking comics and turning them upside down. I mean, brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. And it's, yeah, Cody, jump
On
in.
that line, though, so with the move to digital, you can't do that. Obviously.
Unless you lock your screen and do it. Yeah. No, but I mean, with that, it really was like, it was also a seminal moment for me in terms of like learning that you have to stick with your teammate because DC really didn't want to do it. And we had to really fight for that. And Greg wrote these very impassioned emails. And I was like, what he said, yes, you know, and when we got it through and both of us first saw it and thought it was a mistake, because it was like, wow, that's way more jarring than I expected. And, you know, then we were so proud of it. And it really was a moment, an inflection point in my career. And not just because the thing was doing well at all. That's not what I mean. It was the most important beginning of the most important lesson that I would ever learn in comics, which is that giving your co-creator the room to shine, even at the expense of your own comfort sometimes with your process, is, if you can do it and you're willing to do it, always the right thing, in my opinion. So now Greg teases me because I write him the shortest scripts I write for anybody. He's like, how long did it take you to write this fight scene? I'm like, oh, just, 10 minutes. But I have to, now it's a double page spread with this and whatever. But he knows the trick is I actually like pretty much write full script for myself and then like unwrite it for him so that, I can, because I have to visualize it.
Sure.
And then undo it so that he can reinterpret it, but for the pacing and that. But yeah, like, so with him, I do really loose, like Marvel style scripts with Tony for Noctera. I do pretty much full script, but with like some areas, like he really likes the action sequences, sort of less choreographed dialogue in. And with other people like Raphael, who I've worked with for so long, we have a shorthand where I can just like, completely just can tell them on the phone and be like, blah, 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 blah. And that's what works best for us. So it really is just like person to person, what process gets them their best work, in their mind. So that's one of the things with best formats, different books, everything.
So looking ahead at the future Scott Snyder COMIXOLOGY books, you mentioned a few of them, but and I know that there have been pressers and stuff talking about who all the creators are, but just in case somebody's not familiar that's listening, you want to sound off on who all you're working with and bringing into the loop on these books?
Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, you were frozen for a second. Were you able to hear me?
Yeah, it's weird. I have it on my I'm plugged into like an actual Ethernet, so it should hold pretty well, I think. But so I'm doing We Have Demons, which is our big marquee kind of Saturday morning cartoon, but R-rated and
with demons ripping body parts out of buttholes.
John Glapian, who was our inker on Batman. And with Dave McKeag, who is the colorist on American Tano, who lettered a bunch of my DC stuff, which I'm really thrilled about. So that's We Have Demons. That comes out usually first of the 3 books that are coming out from COMIXOLOGY right now. And then we have Clear, like you said, with Francis Manipul and Darren Bennett on lettering. He did a bunch of my DC stuff too. He's awesome. And
designed our site logo.
He's great. And World, yeah, they're amazing. And so that book comes out second, and then Night of the Ghoul is Francesco Francavilla and Darren and me, and that's third. So it goes like first week, second week, third week, usually of the month. And then the next wave of books coming out is going to be Canary with Dan Panosian, doing coloring his own stuff, everything, and that's a Western. It's going to be good. I really love that one. It's about a mine that collapsed 15 years ago, back in the late 1800s. And all these strange murders start happening in the area of the mine collapse. And this marshal gets called out to investigate it and go up to the town, which is called Canary. to go figure out what's going on, and it leads down this really dark path about what they were really mining for and all this stuff. And I really love it. And then the second one of that second wave will be Barnstormers with Tula Lotay. It's straight up historical fiction, and it's about a guy who's a barnstormer, which is back after World War I. Some pilots bought their outdated planes at that time, like these Curtiss Jennies, for cheap, and brought them back to the States, and then flew around to show everybody what a plane was, and like give them a ride for a couple bucks, and just freewheel across the country. And it's about a guy who has kind of a checkered past, who's doing that and crashes into what he thinks is a party for himself, but is actually a wedding, and he doesn't realize it. And the people are obviously pretty angry at him and beat him up. And when he wakes up the next morning and goes to get his plane, the bride is there with a shotgun. And she's like, "You're taking me with you." And that's the start of the story. And it's about a moment historically that reminds me of this moment, when it's kind of in between. It's right after this cataclysmic pandemic, and after World War I as well. And it's the kind of odd period of fragile quiet before a bunch of other horrible stuff seems to be coming. The Depression and everything else coming. So, and the rich at that time were sort of living it up in that Gatsby-esque way. And so it's about two kind of desperate kids that decide the best plan is to fly a plane that nobody, onto the properties of these big mansions where nobody sees it land, and then sneak into these rich parties and steal shit and party and fly away before anyone notices that that's what they did. It's a lot of fun. And then obviously, someone starts chasing them and all that. So it's a dark romantic adventure that has a kind of punk feel that is about now, but is then. And then the third one of that second wave is Dudley Datsun and the Forever Machine, which is a YA book that I'm doing with Jamal Ghoul and Chris Sotomayor. I love it. It's like about a boy who's a real, like a tinkerer and an inventor. And he winds up coming across this miraculous machine that Daedalus invented back in ancient times. It's a perpetual motion machine. And the perpetual motion machine has been passed down through all these different inventors through the years, from Leonardo da Vinci to Nikola Tesla, and it's been protected because it defies the laws of physics and therefore opens doors to these other realities. And it comes into his possession, and it's being chased by this group called the Needle's Eye, and it's a lot of fun. There's robot dogs in it and everything. So I really enjoy working with him on that. That one we're just getting started now. And then the final wave, which will be in really the end of 2022, kind of into 2023, is the Book of Evil. And that one is a prose mixed with spot illustrations with me and Jock. And it's about what if 97 or 8% of the population is born psychopaths starting tomorrow. And it takes place about 20 years after that happens, in a world where you present one way or another when you turn about 13, 14, when you hit adolescence. And again, most people at that age, you lose your empathy, you lose your this vestigial kind of conscience and fit in with everybody else. And society is actually working great, is what it seems like at that time, is the surprise. It's not like a post-apocalyptic environment at all. And the kids all live in this kind of shitty neighborhood called Cradle until they grow up. And it's about these 5 kids that decide to run away and see if there's this refuge that they've heard about that could just be a lie by the psychopaths, to see if there's a place that you can stop this from happening to you. And they're all about to change one way or another. So it's a really fun, dark book, and it's like a Stand By Me, but done in like a total horror genre.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's written by the main character, and he's an artist. His dad was an artist, and he's an artist, and so his Jock does the illustrations as things he sees along the way. So it's a lot of fun. His dad was a cartoonist in this world, in a comic strip called The Book of Evil. And the comic strip was wildly popular, and it was literally about people from this new modern time who are all psychopaths traveling this team of these two guys that travel back in time, and it looks like kind of like a Dilberty or like a Far Side kind of cartoon where they travel back in time to moments of great altruism and then kill everybody in that scene. And everybody in this future thinks that it's hilarious. And so it's interspersed in the comic, in the book, or the fake comic strips from, the Book of Evil. So it's this real visual sort of layering of like prose and then spot illustrations and then old-timey cartoon. So cartoon strip. So that one I love. And then the last one is Duck and Cover with Raphael Albuquerque, and it's right up the same kind of alley of American Vampire, but it's about a night in the United States. And am I still here?
We lost you there for a second.
Yeah, we lost you for a second. So Duck up.
We lost you for more than a second.
More than a second. New York does not like us right now.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, okay. You just unfroze. So.
Oh, sorry.
Duck and Cover.
Yes,
where we were.
About a nuclear exchange that happens in 1955 between the United States and Russia, and miraculously, only kids that hide under their desks survive. Yeah, it's fun, right? So, and like everybody else is obliterated, and so it's this world where all these kids are still alive and don't understand why their desks and them were perfectly preserved, and they want to solve the mystery of that. This one group of kids in Colorado is the one we focus on, and there are other tribes of kids, and there's also the threat of Russia invading at that time, and they all have this rockabilly and all kinds of 1950s shit mixed together with post-apocalyptic. So it's really fun. It's like, and it's manga influenced, so it's got this kind of real propulsive, soapy quality, that I love. So it kind of builds on the feeling of what we like to do in American Vampire. So
right.
That's the whole bunch. And then the only other book that I've announced that we're working on now is Chain, which is with Ariella Cristantina. I love this book. It's about what if it's about a group of people in very remote Alaska, in this town that in the winter clears out, where it's only like 25 people essentially, and they discover through this helicopter crash that the news ahead of everybody else that the food chain is about to reverse and start every 6 hours. Another level of it is going to eat upwards at us, like come after us. So it's going to be insects and then birds and so they're trying to decide what to do. So it's kind of a zombie farmhouse story that has the end of the world as this backdrop, and it's all about sort of class, and the food chain in that way. So that one is super dark and claustrophobic and fun as well. It's cool. Like the gimmick, the way that the helicopter, it's like the richest man in the world accidentally crashes because all these insects got in his thing and ate him. And they find him in the snow and are like, what the hell is happening? And he's like, no one knows about this yet, but in like 10 hours, this is going to happen. And you got to get me to this bunker. It's hidden over here. And so they have to decide what to do and whether or not they believe it. It's kind of like, do you ever see that movie Miracle Mile? It's from the 80s. It like haunted me as a kid. It's probably
sounds familiar.
It's Anthony Edwards. It's probably terrible, so don't watch it. But as a kid, it like freaked me out. And it's about a guy who's like hanging out in a diner, and it was in the 80s, and he goes to a phone booth because it's ringing, and he picks it up, and this guy's like, oh my God, Dad, we did it. We launched the missiles. They're going to launch in 5 minutes. Nobody knows about it yet. In like 3 hours, Russia will retaliate. Get out of the city, get out. And then he's like, this isn't your dad. And he's like, what? Never mind. Like, click. And Anthony Edwards is like, was that real? Like, is that? And then it turns out slowly that it's real. It's that kind of feeling of like, what do you do if you're the only one that knows this is happening?
Right.
How do you react? So it's that kind of a story where it's very much like almost like a play, but you see a lot of the end of the world stuff as well, like in the background and all of this too. So
how cool is that?
A Curb Your Enthusiasm episode all about that.
Yeah, right. So that's like everything over the next 2.5 years that I'm working on for COMIXOLOGY, and I have Noctera. So, it's all staggered. So I'm doing okay. The Witches Writers Room started officially yesterday for the.
That's exciting, dude.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm so thrilled. Yeah, it's really, it seems like it has a good chance of making it on the air. So I hope it does. But I love the people in the room. They're great. And it's my first time doing this, and Jock is doing the design work and the concept art. So hopefully that was the only monkey wrench where I'm like, why I'm so tired is like, I had everything like very meticulously planned out schedule wise. And then I was like, how do I turn this down if this could work? So it's the one thing that's kind of like, I love it, but it's also like, oh my God, I'm going to die, like being overworked.
Plans are great until you get punched in the mouth. So.
Right. But I'm happy. I'm happy. So, and it's only, I wrote the pilot and then I'm overseeing the first 3 to 4 episodes without having to write those. So I'm more of like not a showrunner, but like the kind of point person in the room for story,
creative consultant sort of.
Well, yeah, if it goes to series, then I'm contracted to write more episodes, and I could technically do some in this room, but I don't want to because I think the people in the room are great and I trust them, and I'd rather do them later on when I have more time. So my hope is that we do these and they go to series with it, and then on the other side of that, we'll be able to see it on TV. So yeah, that's the one hitch, was not hitch, but like the one extra kind of weight on me that, it's good. I can do it.
Good. I mean, you're clearly busy, but you're clearly loving it. So
it's the happiest I've ever been work-wise.
Yeah, you sound happy. Like the enthusiasm coming out of you right now is positively infectious.
So, thanks. And like the 2-year-old kept me up half the night last night. So this is like level 10 enthusiasm given my energy level. So I love DC and I still love everybody there. I mean, I talked to Marie Javins and my old editors, pretty frequently, just friends, just texting, calling. And they created a landing place for me when I left. That was like when the pandemic hit, they were very nice about being like, do you want to do that right now? Because who knows what's going to happen with indie stuff and whatever. But I talked to them and I love the idea of going back sometime and doing what I planned doing there. But I'm so happy doing my stuff right now with my friends.
Why wouldn't you be?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard to think about going back right now, in some way, like owning all this stuff with your friends too, like the idea of being able to do what we did with Noctera. I love that series, and that's a genuine ongoing. Like we're working on issue 10 now of that. Issue 7 comes out in December. I mean, Blacktop Bill special comes out in December, and then 7, which is Tony again, and starts the next arc, comes out in January. And the Blacktop Bill special is Dennis Cowan and Kent Williams and Chris Sotomayor. It's really good.
Damn,
it's really
fast.
Yeah, it's got one of my favorite beginnings where it's like it continues a conversation about him that started in issue 4 between these two people on the radio, and Bellwether and this guy Mother Hubbard, and they're talking and they're like, well, how bad is this guy because he's after us? And they're like, well, they think the rumor is a lot of people think he was one of those guys, the kind, and then you see this like husband who's like kissing his daughters goodnight, and it's like, one of those guys that everybody's like, oh, he's quiet, but he's so nice. Like, look at him with his kids and blah, blah, blah. And like, the kind of guy that like has the lovely wife and does the food drive and whatever, but maybe spends a little too much time out in the shed at night. And then you see and then be like, and the shed might have like a door that's behind the door that behind that has all kinds of terrible torture things and you see that and he opens it and, and he's like, and then the other voice is like, what? Because he's like, I heard he was a hitman. So he's like, he was a hitman, like a real killer. And they're like, well, that's the rumor, that he was this guy who was hired to torture and kill men, women, and children. And then you turn the page, and the guy, as he's getting the weapons out, he turns the page, and this axe comes and chops him in the head, and he falls down. And then there's Blacktop Bill standing by him, and it's like, but he was actually much worse than that. It's really fun. It's just like, it's that kind of a story. But he's got a real philosophy. I love that issue because it's like, I did all this research on like asphalt and blacktop, where I was like, because I love the idea of like, what is it? What it really is, like asphalt is essentially like dead organisms. It's like, because it's dead microorganisms and things crushed and superheated into this viscous black goop, along with that's what petroleum and that stuff is. So the idea is like he thinks of himself, and blacktop is used in ancient times. I mean, asphalt was as mortar and to waterproof ships. And so you're kind of like binding things together with death, this idea of death being the big connector that should remind you that you're part of everything, and that, you go back to the earth and all of this. And in our time, it's this kind of deathless moment when, everybody kind of sees themselves reflected back all the time, and there isn't that. And Bill, he sees himself as the antidote to that. And what he used to do for fun, and he has a job, which is he's hired. This crime family sometimes uses him to kill other killers that are for other families, and that's what you saw in the first pages. But he does certain things for himself. Like he has like his passion killings, and those things that's ties into his whole philosophy. I won't spoil it, but I kind of love it. I love him. He's so evil. So.
It seems to me like he falls a little bit into the same mold as Skinner Sweet, where he's the bad guy you just love to hate.
Yeah, well, Skinner was always going to break good in that story. In my initial outline, he starts off real dark and then goes good. Bill has this philosophy. I mean, his philosophy really is like ultimately that we've forgotten what really matters, and that he sees himself as kind of death incarnate, or an agent of darkness, where he believes that we've forgotten how much death matters, like that death, it's like, and so the people he goes after, I'll spoil it a little bit, like some of the people he goes after, it's like people who have escaped death in different ways and are the kind of hashtag blessed people and that stuff. Yeah. And he does it in a way where you never know what hit you, and who, he just doesn't believe that we should make light of the idea that death is something that gives meaning to life.
Right.
And so with him, I love him because the more he learns about the shades, he wants to know. He left Arc 1 with this machine, this helmet that allows you to kind of understand their language a little bit. And so he leaves with this desire to see if he fits in with them, and if what they're doing and this darkness at the center of the universe is animate, and that he can become part of it somehow. So I really love his arc because he's bad as it comes, but he breaks even worse and gets like even darker and meaner. So he's like a real experiment in how bad you can go and still be really likable. And Arc 2 brings him back in a really fun way, in a fun role, because they need his help for some stuff. So they have to go find him, and like, even though he's trying to kill them. So it's good.
So what you're telling me is you're just having the time of your life right now.
I wish I could like clone myself and just like, so I have a little more downtime, but
sure. Well, you got to put a kiddo to bed. I mean, come on.
Creatively, you're all over the place right now. Like,
yeah.
You've got historical fiction. You've got like with Clear, neo-noir, cyberpunk. I don't know what to, with We Have Demons. We've got like epic, high fantasy, adventure, action.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everywhere.
It is. And that was the goal, was to like, when I do the class, the Substack class, it's like, the goal is to tell people that like the first day that the rule really is like what my teacher told me when I was in like, it was like, 12th grade, which is like, you have to write the story that's the most exciting to you to find today. That's it. Like whatever story you would love to pick up and read that would make you feel like you're the most exciting writer on the shelves, that has to be what you do, whether it's memoir or it's political or it's fantasy or whatever it is. So for me, I feel like I could go back and do more Batman, or I could go to Marvel or do those things if they'd have me. But it's more like those are things that I do want to do at a time. Not go back to Batman, but I have ideas for Marvel. But I'm so used to flexing those superhero muscles right now that doing something where it's like, oh, I want to do part prose, part this. I want to do historical fiction. I want to work with Francis, who I love and have worked with, but do something we've never tried together. And same thing with Greg. I mean, the thing, like a lot of the stuff that we're doing in We Have Demons, like leans into the sensibility that we've, is clearly us. But the crazy thing with Greg is like, I work with that guy. We've been friends for 10 years. I've worked with him on, how many issues between Last Night and Metal and Death Metal and Batman, like, 1,000 pages or whatever. We have never not worked where we were under tremendous deadline pressure and sales pressure and constrictions from corporate comics, where, you work on Batman, the pressure of that series. I mean, the thing about working on Batman, like it rockets you into a different thing very quickly. Sure. You saw it with like Tom and James and everybody, like, unless you're Grant, you're coming in, you're already there. Yeah. Like, but everything about it changes your life. Like, whereas you're making no money before Batman, you go on Batman and suddenly you're selling high enough that you're making a real living off a comic, because the sales structure is such at DC, or was, I mean, it was even with James, that if you're selling above 50 or 60,000 and that book sells 100, 150, sometimes 200,000, depending on where you are with it, you're making like more money than you ever expected to make just from that series. But on top of that, like everything depends on it. Like, so it's a little bit more diversified now at DC with different neighborhoods of books doing things differently, and it's less connected. But there was a time, especially when we were on it in 2012, 2013, where so many Bat books were dependent on it to do things all the time, and that pressure is huge. And then obviously when you do an event, when you do Metal or Death Metal, and it's doing all these things to the line, and it's depending, everything's depending, and that pressure, I mean, it's a lot to work under. And in no way am I saying like, poor me. What I'm saying is, to work that way is not to experience the joy or the thrill of having the time to play and like figure stuff out and experiment. And on We Have Demons, we can do all that, which
sure.
What I'm saying is that alone makes it like a completely different book for me and Greg than the way that we've had to work, and the way I'm sure we will eventually work again at some point at Marvel or DC or whatever. So it's so different and weird and uncharted territory to be like, Greg, how about we take a day off and just like talk about blah, blah, blah. Like what happens to, this character that you meet in issue 2, like, yeah, sure. Why not? We can do it. Like, that's just weird for us, because it was years, just years of like, it has to be in you see Greg's tweets all those years, it has to be in, you got to do it, you got to get it done. And if it doesn't sell this, like, and if it isn't doing, like, everything changes, your livelihood changes, the line changes, your friends that are editors are living on like razor thin budgets. And what if something happens there? Like, all of it is like, so to be able to move away from that for a little bit, it's a lot of fun, even though it's like, everything is staggered, just to be clear. I'm not like killing myself with it, where the first 3 books are done. Like Demons, the first arc of Demons is done. The first arc of Ghoul is done. And I'm just on the last issue of Clear. So I've already started the other ones. I started them before I started these to give those people a little bit of a head start. And now I'm returning, because they had other projects, and now I'm returning to those to do those. So it's not as bad as it looks in terms of how much stuff is on my plate at any one time.
Sure.
But even though I have a lot more, I don't feel the same pressure. I feel like I can control it with my friends and be like, hey, listen, like you know what, you want to take an extra week, let's take an extra week. Like,
Yeah,
it's not a big deal.
Well, it brings it back around to something we talked about earlier, is just a general sense of community. It's you, it's your friends, you're doing the thing you want to do. You don't have a bunch of bean counters or even editors breathing down your neck with deadlines. I mean, you're getting to create, and you're getting to do so in a way that truly gives back and does something new with the industry. So my hat is totally off to you, and I can't wait to see where this goes.
Thanks, man. And
I don't think you're going to be the last person to get a deal like this when this continues to blow up.
Oh, I really hope. I mean, I hope that it's a gateway for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I've been telling a bunch of friends that are interested, I've started talking to Chip about it, that are people creators that, I think you'll have stuff coming out there. And again, my feeling really is that, like, there's right now, I mean, I'm so happy to be a part of this image boom with Noctera and with Undiscovered Country and that stuff. And then a small part of this, what James is able to do with Department of Truth and Something Is Killing Children at Boom, and see all these companies, like I think Vault's killing it right now, just doing great, and
yeah.
I think the only way that we're in trouble is if we don't try new things and we stick
Absolutely.
to the idea of
you've always got to be looking ahead. Right?
Yeah, and again, I'll be the first one to go out there and be like, oh, that was a mistake, if it's a mistake. But right now, I see the way that I see what's already happening with it in terms of the way that people are responding, not just to the books we're doing, but the amount of people that have come to me and said, I got a subscription and now I found all these other creators I love, and I'm going to my store now where I wasn't going to a store before because I started digitally. So the evidence that I'm seeing, at least, even in my small provincial way, is really positive about it. So I have a lot of high hopes for what I think. I think this format, what I think Substack will do. I think Substack is great.
Right.
And that creators there, I think it empowers them to make stuff on their own terms. I think you'll see more creators taking control of their social media, doing stuff that allows them to sell merchandise and stuff like that themselves and sell their own covers, sell their own books differently. So I think I know it's a scary time and people keep talking about but I really think it's an exciting time and in a good way. And I'm not trying to be like Pollyanna. What I see from creators is a level of commitment and excitement.
Absolutely. I mean, God, Tom Taylor's, blowing everybody out. He's the next you. I mean, there's just a wealth of creators out there that are just unafraid to put themselves out there and be like, yeah, I'm going to do this crazy thing. I hope you come along for me on the ride. But
no
hey,
doubt about it.
I'm putting my ass out there and we're just going to do it.
I think I think the pandemic kind of did that, where it really,
absolutely.
I think it accelerated what was happening with people that way. And it caused a lot of people to reevaluate, and where you see a lot of, I think those people like Tom and other people land is in places where it's like, life's too short not to be doing the thing that really excites.
Absolutely. I don't think it's a coincidence that Al Ewing comes out with his first creator-owned book, I think ever, or at least not in a very long time, as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah, and Tom, I mean, the opposite's true too, where Tom has had ideas for these characters for Superman for years. And I know we've been friends a long time, and seeing him explode on those things is so exciting because he's been dying to get there and do that. And I see that with Phil Johnson, who was my student, and with Josh going over to Batman finally. He's had ideas for Batman forever, and James doing what he's doing. Clearly, like James I speak to every day, and him, I mean, what he's been able to do this last year has been inspiring on all kinds of levels. Sure. So you just see it wherever. I feel like regardless of whether that means someone's going to superheroes, they're going to indie, they're going to whatever it is. I think the people, the creators that I'm friends with who have similar priorities to me, I think really took a hard look and were like, what can I do that's going to make me exciting to me right now? and that's why I think you have such a high level of quality happening, like from everything, like from, you know, books today like King of Spies down to, you know, going out and reading like literally like what Chip was doing on Substack with Public Domain. Like I love that book, like all across the board, from, you know, like top level superhero stuff like what Tom's doing with you know, with Dark Knights of Steel and that stuff, all the way to what people are doing on their digital on digital comics. Like,
Right.
they're making great stuff right now. I really feel like there's stuff for everybody. Like,
There really is.
Yeah, and I'm a big stats nerd, so like I'm constantly on Comic-Con looking at sales figures and looking at trends and trying to figure out like where are things going. So when people started saying comics are dying, I started looking at it and realizing like, no, comics aren't dying. Comics are diversifying. Like, yes, we don't have $1 million or million unit sales for X-Force #1, but we've got like 3,000 copies of Jughead the Hunger. Right.
And by the way, like getting 1 million like people, it's not about like people don't read comics. It's about they're not necessarily willing to read comics the same way we read them 30 years ago, the same way you won't watch movies or television or any of that stuff the same way. It doesn't mean those shows or those things are dying or that medium is dying. And with comics, you know, you see record booms here and there in different ways all the time. And people poo-poo it and be like, oh, well, you know, it's just indie. It's not, or it's superhero because it was this. Like, if you can't do that and then be like, the 8,000 variant covers back in 1990, whatever, for this, like, we're that. Like, there's the whole thing is like, you know, I don't know. I really dislike that kind of, well, it's not what it was, or this. You hear it all day long, and to me,
true of literally anything, right? I mean, if you're not adapting and changing, you're dying.
Exactly. And I wish we were more. I mean, I think that the people I'm friends with, and I think the majority of people in the community, are celebratory about change and about adaptation and about all of it, about evolution. Yeah. And I think that I don't like the idea of clinging to this. Well, you know, it used to be this kind of reader, now it's this. Like, yeah, but you're not counting all the people that literally like read differently right now, or that are all the people that like are that read, you know, through not just digital, but read indie comics, but not superhero comics, or read manga and this. Like, my kid reads. My 10-year-old loves like YA books and this, and then buys back issues because he loves reading old comics. Like, everyone reads in their own weird way right now. The whole goal is just inviting everybody in, man. That's the thing, is like when you stand around talking about what you don't like, or you stand around talking about, you know, what you feel is, you know, I don't like this Superman. I don't like this Spider-Man. I don't like. Like, why don't you sit and just talk about what you love? Like, talk about and I get it. I get that people do it out of passion and they're protective of their characters or what they.
Sure.
But I just think there's so much to celebrate right now. That's it. There's so many great books, and
you're saying comics are for everyone.
Right. Exactly. It's just
say that louder.
I've been on both sides of it. You know, I've done things when I was on Batman and Metal. I never really address it or very rarely, but like, you know. There are tons of people that are going to hate what you do no matter what. Like, when you're on a character like Batman, if you do the wrong thing, you have Catwoman come in the story, you're going to have the people that like want them to wind up together hating you if they don't. And if you put them together, the people that hate her in the story, you're going to be mad at you. If you have Ivy in the story, there's a whole hornet's nest of like, there's always going to be people that like hate what you do one way or another. And I made Commissioner Gordon Batman for half a year. I redid his origin my way of doing it was always to try and disarm them by doing something at the beginning that was like, this isn't what you think. I see what your concerns are, but I'm going to do it my way, and I hope you enjoy it. But I am a fan as well, and I know what you're worried about. And I'm sorry you're worried about it, but let's go have fun. And my thinking is like, you know, I would listen to them be like, how you're ruining Batman. How could you? And I'm like, man, it's a story, and it's gonna. Bruce Wayne's coming back. I don't have the power to keep Bruce Wayne off stage very long.
Right.
Yeah.
But the whole point of those kinds of stories is a lot of the time to just push things in a direction that will grow the franchise, and then also show you why your character belongs back in the cowl, and is why Bruce Wayne belongs as Batman, and is core. It's Superior Spider-Man, like, is a love letter to Peter Parker.
Or Nightfall.
Exactly, Nightfall. So I don't know. I'm just like, I understand and I enjoy the passion and I enjoy the anger, and I like it. I really do. Like, I appreciate it. But
I've on
it,
record as having criticized your Justice League and praised it. So
What?
I said I'm on record as having criticized your Justice League, as well as having praised it.
Oh,
Like,
thanks.
that's comics. That's the beauty of comics in the modern era. I feel like that we can react and interact as it goes.
Exactly. And the whole fun is, it's just giving everything a chance and understanding that, right now, I think if people took a longer view that are worried or scared about things, it's a moment when so much is changing, and I get it. That's scary. But really, if you look at what creators are doing and the way that I think people are embracing kind of their creators, especially, but are embracing kind of their passion with stuff, and the quality of books coming out all over the place. Like, I think it's a great moment. I really do, and I'm very excited for what it's going to engender in 5 years from now too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, Scott, do you have any final thoughts? Any nuggets of awesome wisdom that you want to throw out there before we close it out? Because this has been such a special interview. Thank you so much for taking
it's been a pleasure. I'm sorry I was late. I really apologize. I honestly
I think the fact that we're gone almost an hour and 40 minutes makes up for you being a few minutes late.
That's literally how I get him to sleep, by like rubbing his back. And then when I stop, if he's still awake, he's like, rub back. So I was like this, like checking my phone, like rubbing his back and rubbing it, and then I slowly remove, rub back, da. Oh my god. Rub back.
I want to go on record saying that the very first time I interviewed you was during a Hawaii sunrise.
Oh, really?
And this time we have gone all the way through a Hawaii sunset.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I miss Hawaii so much. We used to go there all the time. My grandfather lived there.
Right.
And I love going there. I miss it.
Well, you're welcome anytime.
I will. One day I will be there and look you up, Cody. We'll have fun.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Great. All right. Thanks, you guys. I'm going to hop off, but I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Best of luck with everything. And the man, the myth, the legend, Scott Snyder, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping in, Scott. We'll talk again soon, brother.
Yeah, man. Anytime. Thanks to everybody at you guys. Like, honestly, I love Comic Watchers. I love your site. I love, honestly, like, I talk to you all the time, Cody. I love the how much what a fan I am of everything. So at Comic Watch. So I appreciate it.
Same here.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right. You too, Scott. And that's our show, Cody. Thank you so much for stopping in and doing your damnedest to be Mike this week. I know it's a tough gig, but somebody had to do it.
I grew the beard out and everything. Like, I'm doing my best.
So somewhere on the East Coast, Mike is grinning right now. But thank you so much for helping arrange this interview, man. And of course, thank you to Scott. Thank you to everyone for listening. Until next time, we remain the Comic Watchers Show. Go read something cool. Support your local comic book shop or digital platform. And above all, be good to each other. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.